Quick backdrop. So Joey Connect, one of the senior leaders with Proteus. Proteus Engage, one of our flagship products. I've been with the enterprise 24 years. Seen a lot of things work, seen a lot of things not work. We're going to focus on the things that work. So appreciate everybody's time here, and on a Tuesday. Today's Tuesday, Rum. Awesome. So let's get started. So the reason why you're, there we go. The reason why you're here is many of you probably are in some sort of B2B business that is delivering professional services of some type. Those professional services can be contracts for literally consulting. It can be also other types of services. We really don't care here. When we say professional services, we mean anything that you're delivering to a client, custom development, to consulting, to projects, really doesn't matter to us. A lot of our clients obviously have some element of professional services, if not all professional services. We also have clients that are delivering professional services, some product. Then we have clients that are also delivering software, right? So a lot of these delivery mechanisms, you'll see we try to align with also professional services. And so I encourage you, obviously, as we go through these, to think about your own environment, some of the challenges you've had. But I always like to start a little bit with just the overarching complexity of what's going on. And if any of you on this call are over 35, maybe 40, you know that this is just metastasized dramatically, just with the number of people, corporate governance, siloing not only within your own organization, but silos in the client organization. And so it just exacerbates a lot of challenges and problems in professional services delivery, or again, project delivery. So we're going to walk through these. This is just high level, that it's can't run amok, right? A lot of people, more money, more problems. The larger the dollar of the project, the more problems you're going to have, the higher expectations, and just all the potential pitfalls that can kind of come through that, right? So many of our clients are obviously dealing with these challenges because you're just dealing with humans, and you're dealing with expectations, and there's a lot of potential areas where this can go wrong. And so we're going to share with you, I think I said 5, or the team said 5 in the thing. I think we're actually going to go through 6, and probably more than that as I continue to go here. But your environment probably looks something like this. There's on the left-hand side yourself, and then the client side, and lots of different stakeholders, lots of different opinions, lots of different expectations. And quite frankly, everybody wants it on demand also. So they want real-time feedback and access, which is frequently a challenge on these projects. So one, it's understanding the environment, right? All of you live in this environment. I assume this is heavily prevalent in business. And so what I want to do next is more of a self-evaluation. And what I just realized on the screen is this black lettering does not jive real well with this slide, but hopefully you can see here. But this is a homework assignment for everybody on this call. And so these are the common pitfalls in PS delivery and some of the challenges around that. There are 2 slides that I'm going to go through these common pitfalls, and I want you, from your own purview, to write down just what challenges is this happening, obviously, within your group. So we talk about delivery here. Obviously, the concept and the topic is about delivery, and we call onboarding or implementation. But a lot of times you had no chance from the start. A lot of times the project was poorly defined. And maybe that's not your org, but we have had many clients that have really, really struggled on making sure the actual scope and expectations were effectively managed during the sales process before getting into it. Some of you might be chuckling. Maybe that's every project in your group that is that way. Some of you are like, never heard that, Joe. Congrats. But we see that. You'll see, if you've been on our website, one of the resources we see a lot of success with is onboarding or project delivery begins in the last 25% of the actual sale, because it really does a lot of times in professional services and other contracting. It's because at that point you're really doing the definition and figuring it all out. And I'll talk a little bit more to that. So you might actually have a problem before you're even getting to the delivery. Um, then a lot of clients have just, let's call it ad hoc client onboarding, and we see that extensively. Some of the reasoning behind that is every project we do is different kind of methodology, which we would call false and just because it's not true. The expectations of your customers are actually pretty consistent. I don't care how you do your business. It's more their expectations that matter, and filling that delta, right? Um, Again, a lot of times it's misalignment between the sales and delivery team. This would be kind of the hidden way of saying handoffs. So looking at your organization and the services you're providing, if you're not a sole proprietor or a sole contributor or a very, very small team, you might have no handoff issues that you might be involved the entire time. But a lot of our clients have different teams. And so when you have different teams, and if it's a larger project or a more complicated project, there are a lot of expectations woven into that. And the last thing you want to have clients have to do is retell their whole story, their needs, their problems, their wants, their desires to you again. So if that's you, mark that out. Um, Weak governance is something about setting expectations. I'll talk a lot about that. Want to make sure there's clear roles and everything. Resource allocation, you might be asking, Joe, what does that have to do with this? We'll talk about that more in kind of one of the solutions being mutual plans and holding people accountable, and pre-mortems, which is predicting failure before failure happens, which is extremely important for a lot of our clients, and bodes very successful. So again, on this first list, jot down what might be affecting you. Here are more. Do you have lack of engagement post-sale, meaning when you send emails, they kind of go to Never Never Land and basically there's no clear visibility? That's a big problem for a lot of groups. Communication breakdowns, again, mark these down if this is part of the challenges you're having. For some of our clients, which it's more and more every day, usually there's some sort of data transfer that has to happen, meaning either during the sales process for definition, but then also when you're delivering your services, whatever it might be, having no consistent way of moving data back and forth or sharing things securely. A lot of you are probably dealing with regulated industries, banks, hospitals, finance. Quite frankly, every industry right now is regulated industry. And so security is a big thing. So you better not be sharing all of this confidential information via email. Email is not secure, brings in all sorts of problems. So you got to be thinking about that from data access perspectives, and also just corporate governance of your own company liability, and also from the client side. So data management or data aggregation. So again, mark it down. Unclear metrics. I don't know if any of you have experienced this. We hear this. Is there's a project going on, and there really is no clear in the beginning phases measuring of ROI. Like how do we determine success to this project, and how do we hold people accountable to that? That's a big thing. So think about that on your projects. We call it the mission critical 120, which is the 120 days after the delivery of your project or service. How do you score? Where are you at? How do you justify the investment? How do you show trend lines to that investment? And in professional services, this is kind of really critical. It's critical, obviously, in software delivery and product delivery, clearly, but a lot of times in consulting projects, you name it, the clients are testing you. And so your delivery of that first project, if it's a net new client to you, is really the make or break of the LTV, lifetime value of that client to you. If that goes Willy Wonka, your chances of getting other projects from them dramatically drops off. And so a lot of the times how that's delivered is obviously an ROI or whatever the target problem you were solving, right? People just don't do things companies just don't do things to do things. They do things to solve problems or create opportunities. How are you effectively measuring that in your delivery? And then how are you sharing that back with the stakeholders, obviously, that paid for it? It's a real big thing, real big thing. And then another one to consider for you is failure to anticipate the risks. Um, Kind of just meandering into projects, kind of the rigmarole. I'll talk about this because this is where you get your classic Johari windows, where you didn't see the risk coming. And how we anticipate that with a lot of our clients is obviously having a structure of how you do a lot of this stuff so that you can help unearth these and address those problems before they kind of smack you when you didn't see it coming. So these are just the pitfalls, okay? So a lot of the times in project PS, we see that these are frequently a common set of areas that individuals are struggling, and then that permeates into delays or other problems, right? These are just the core problems around that. Um, the symptoms you'll get from this is people slow to react, slow to respond, projects dying on the vine, no one caring, right? Those are all just symptoms. Like these are the true problems that are behind those, right? We're being ghosted, we're not getting paid. Um, the list gets pretty big. And so the root cause, Eastern Western medicine on this kind of stuff, the root cause is typically around these types of things. So again, I encourage everybody here, these last two slides, and of course I will share this deck with you after it. It's kind of like a scorecard, quite frankly. And if you go through it and you're candid, is one of our values in our company and one of our engagements with our clients. We always talk about, in order for us to really knock this out of the park for you and make this scalable, make this repeatable, is I truly need to know your problems. We can help you solve those, and we can commit to making you successful. So a lot of it is really breaking these down and not just saying we're good there, because even if you're good, you could get better, right? You could scale. It could be more automated. It could be higher touch. So again, these are the common pitfalls. All right. Hopefully everybody took those to heart. And again, I will share. So the tagline clearly for this webinar was, 5 strategies. I'm actually going to give you 6, and I'm actually going to just show you some things, some real world use cases of this, because I always feel people learn in different ways. There's the dialogue here, but then kind of sometimes seeing is believing. And again, I don't know any of you. And so a lot of this is just giving you the ideas and allowing you to reverse engineer that into your environment. And unlike every webinar, I always offer a free conversation, just with me, not selling, just literally complain about your challenges or the opportunities. And I provide feedback to you just based on our ridiculous amount of experience and success here. So the strategies, this is 3 on this deck and 3 on the next one. So again, encouraging you to think about these and identify maybe some gaps on your side, and then I'll actually walk through these. Number one problem most of the time is enhanced communication and transparency as to what the hell is going on. With the plethora of stakeholders, with the plethora of expectations, these are really big areas, because a lot of the times in professional services, if you're selling into medium-sized businesses or larger, not small businesses, you're going to have the original people you sold into who cut the checks, leadership, other people, and then you're going to be handed off to implementation teams or next teams down. And so how do you keep that group of stakeholders aware as to what is exactly going on? There's lots of solutions to this. Obviously, centralized environment, mutual plans. I'm going to pound you with mutual plans because they work. It's not because it's just an idea. They literally work, and it's mutual. It also helps with your teams committing and of course the client teams, but really creating that unwavering amount of transparency about where you're at and how things are progressing, good or bad, is key to that. All right. Second one is, if you haven't actually mapped out literally your handoff process, if you're a little bit of a larger org, meaning you have silos of sales off to implementation teams, or if you're larger and you have blended stuff, you might have onboarding teams, you might have CS teams. We don't really care what titles are, but you just have to think of what is the flow of a professional services or project that you are generating. Who touches that from the minute it's been sold or almost sold all the way through to the post 120 days after launch, and literally mapping that out. What is the handoff process? What needs to be shared? How do we handle all this? And then obviously your onboarding process. And I alluded to this earlier. I'm letting you guys obviously read all the bullet points, but a lot of the things around this are mutual plans, creating clear flows, and having people own certain things and holding them accountable to those dates. And different ways of doing that, of course, is possible. You might be saying again, well, Joe, every project we do is so different. No, the details of what you do might be different, but executing a process, management of expectation management, recaps, keeping stakeholders in alignment on a weekly, bi-weekly basis, whatever the agreed upon structure is repeatable, it is measurable, and you can do that no matter what you're doing. And that's kind of real important, because something that is not measured or repeatable is hard to improve. And we have come into many groups that are just straight up regular, like coaching or consulting companies, engineering, you name it. And they're like, well, Joe, every project is literally different. Well, obviously, but not the customer experience and your expectations as a VP or as a manager or as the customer. Those expectations are high, and you want to have visibility on where things are at and are they progressing well. And if there are what we call Smokey the Bear moments where you see smoke, you want to know about that as soon as possible, because if you address that at the smoke level, you can prevent forest fires. And forest fires, in that metaphor, is revenue. So pretty important. Clear metrics of success. Again, this is sometimes more prevalent in our software clients, because they're like, people are hiring software to be X or Y to do this. But also, whatever you're doing, what was the original goals and expectations, of those clear metrics? Because these are critical pieces of communication and collaboration back to the leadership during the project, because your project might take 3 months, it might take 2 years, like depends what it is, right? A conversion might be custom project, these types of things, can be very, very long. So again, making sure that you're creating, because this is what is justifying your expense, your services, and outcomes, right? Okay. So the first three right there. Second set, I alluded to this. Make sure you got an environment for this data sharing and collaboration. We've done tons of meetings about this. There's some great articles on the site about garbage in, garbage out, because this is a huge problem in professional services and just project-based stuff, is the communication, the collaboration, and then what the hell you're collaborating on, and the data, right? And so that's a very big piece. So think about how you're managing that, reviewing the data, making sure everything is going well, because that's where timelines and poor deliveries live, is in bad data. Or the classic is you receive the data and no one looks at it for 2 weeks, and then you finally look at it and it's garbage or the wrong data, and now everything's delayed even longer. It's the classic use case of that. So make sure you have data processes in place and review elements kind of built into that. We do that via mutual plans or checklists to help clean the data first. So the data you get has already been validated and elements like that. But then also there's workflows to clean it, make sure it's correct, so that these things don't pop up at the end. That really can take you off implementation, basically strategy. Technology for automations. This one obviously sounds like it's a little bit seeded, but it's true. So obviously we have a purpose-built solution for implementation and onboarding. And so it really, really helps with the consistency of engagement, whether you're a small team so that you can do more projects, or you're a big team and you're growing fast when you're hiring new talent, getting them ramped up. But then ultimately, there's a massive amount of efficiencies on your side, but it's also the expectations of the clients and really meeting them where they want to be met. I would challenge many of you, if any of you watched the football game on Sunday, many of you might have ordered pizza. And so for a $10 expense, you expect to see that thing going in the oven, coming out of the oven, knowing what the temperature of the oven was. You want to see that get into a car. You want to see that it's 2 miles from your house, right? Your expectation on a $10 transaction is pretty high. Let's just be honest with ourselves. It's the same thing with the $12 Netflix on demand account. Your expectations are pretty high. Now flip that to B2B, and somebody doing a contract of professional services or a project with you for 50,000, 100,000, 2.5 million, like their expectations are pretty high. If you think of what their average daily life of feedback, updates, where are things at? How are things going? Are things good? Right? You got to kind of rethink the expectations there. So technology is a big piece of that. And then the last one, which is probably one of the harder things to do for clients. There's kind of two distinct concepts here, because you have to be more and more candid with yourself. Is one, after every project or contract, literally meeting with the client and understanding what went well and what didn't go well. Now, some of you, maybe your services are a little bit more transactional. Still, you should be doing this. But to really improve the onboarding and the whole client experience, it's really about going to them and asking them what they liked, what they didn't like, whether it's through customer advisory boards you might have, or just literally directly calling them. Now, the antithesis of that, which we also have modules in our tool to help with, is what we call pre-mortems. And in the pre-mortem culture, and if you like this concept, we're doing an actual separate webinar about pre-mortems sometime coming up here. I believe it's up for registration, and we're going to really heavy unpack it in that one. But pre-mortems are when you're kicking off a project or a professional services contract, whatever, deploying a software. We use this for all different delivery types, is actually asking the client, and there's a process around this to mitigate risk, is if in 6 months we have another meeting and we're talking about why this didn't work or why this failed, what do you think the causes of that could be? And it's amazing, and you're doing this with the client. It's amazing what people will say. And you'll hear a lot of things that you probably were not considering. And these things could greatly affect the timelines, could greatly affect the success of the project. You'll find out that Bobby in accounting is going to be out for 3 weeks in Cancun because it's his 50th anniversary. And nobody knew that, right? And you need Bobby a lot, right? Things of that nature. So this is a real big piece. And then those are used, obviously, for the mutual plans and all the other elements, the tools that you're using to drive and communicate about the project. So it's a very, very important piece from that aspect. So it's facilitating the conversations and then leveraging that information to drive your mutual plans, your everything around the execution there, right? And so that your chances of success and holding people accountable are much, much higher. Okay. So those are 6. I know we talked about 5. So I'm going to jump, and some of you obviously are looking more for like, well, what does that mean, kind of, Joey, in the real world, and how would that play out? So let me share. And again, much of these I don't even know if that's right. All of these concepts, let's go with that. There are resources on our website, and I'll share some of those in my follow-up with you for cheat sheets, literally the metrics, how to do a pre-mortem, like all sorts of stuff here. But ultimately, let me show you how we help clients solve this problem. Again, rip off and duplicate would encourage conversations with us. But ultimately, this is kind of an environment that our product creates. So this is what we call an engaged workspace. This is client facing. There's a ton of back end. Again, I'm not doing a demo today. What I'm providing you is just an optimized shared environment between you and your team and the client's team. So there's all the people here on the left-hand side. And then for many of our professional services clients and project-based orgs or consulting groups, etc., they have something like this where they have discovery, which is kind of in that sales process with aligning the project and checklists for data collection, quoting, doing all of that here. You don't have to do that, obviously, but a lot of our clients recognize that poor success during the onboarding and project results is because it was misquoted or misaligned at the beginning. You might want to share resources about your team and your consultants. Again, a lot of times in professional services, you're trying to showcase people, experts, SMEs, all sorts of things. A lot of our clients like to do recaps. You can do text recaps, of course, document recaps. Video recaps is extremely popular in this because people consume information on demand, a lot of times leadership off hours. So that's really, really popular. And again, this is all centralized. Lots of our partners want to do like resource libraries. All sorts of things can happen inside the tool set. But these are common kind of structures. And then when you get into your onboarding and delivery of said project, this is a common structure also that we see. Again, all of this is customizable, but for rip off and duplicate, if you like, you have your handoff. HO is handoffs, and obviously the kickoff process, and all sorts of mutual plans. And all of these have data collection, files, forms, literally video delivery, anything. There's full automation and follow-ups. We do a lot of automations to help drive and predict risk. Also, reminding and trying to hold people more accountable on that side. So this is an entire tool set here. I'm not going to go into it, but a lot of times our clients have some sort of handoff kickoff. They also have some sort of implementation process that they want to run through. Also in this, a lot of our clients have to do installs, like go on-prem and do that. So we track everything on-prem also. So there's lots of different pieces to this. Also, if you have third-party people helping, they can also be in here. So it's all centralized. A lot of our clients do training and kind of that last minute kind of obviously getting the client if you're delivering something to them or delivery. Again, these are just high level for you to steal. And then very important for a lot of our clients is post-launch, which is satisfaction surveys, but then also the first 120 days of adoption. So depending on what you're doing, of course, it is highly recommended that you're watching the client's utilization or results from what you deployed with them. This is just right away. We also have a complete QBR process, quarterly business reviews, other kind of processes too that we deliver through the platform. But for today's purposes, for project delivery, professional services, coaching, engineering services, whatever it might be, this is a very, very common structure. Of course, what is here can be limited by who, what, whatever, but a very robust environment. And again, everything is being tracked here, the communication, the collaboration, all the documentation, all of the processes. There's templates behind everything here, making this very fast and simple to deploy, and really, really helps with that consistency of engagement with clients. And this is two-way, obviously, tons with your team, and then of course on the client, you're onboarding there. So just wanted to kind of bring to life 30,000 foot. Again, wet the beak. We do have pilots with professional services clients where you can use the tool for 10 deployments. I'll include that in our thing. We have a PS pilot, which allows you to utilize our platform for up to 10 deployments. And at that time, we obviously expect you're going to be seeing quite a high return, but the solution itself is not very expensive at all, right around 50 bucks a seat. And that's only on your team, nothing to do with your clients. So we have a lot of small business clients and we have a tremendous amount of enterprise clients, really the full gamut there. So this is how you can see a lot of the bleeding points and the pit holes we talked about, pitfalls, counts, really remediates with infrastructure like this. And hopefully you got some ideas of maybe some of those bleeding points and those pitfalls, and then how that might help. So with that said, Excuse me. That's not what we want to do. I offer this up, and it's been taken advantage of quite a bit. A lot of our webinar attendees, again, are at different phases of their journey. And so I do offer up basically just a one-to-one session literally with me. And that allows me to hear kind of where your challenges are and ideas. Obviously, I know our tool set can help, but everybody's at different phases or different processes within their business growth or needs. So I offer up, that's my email there. I will be following up with everybody and offering obviously our PS trial. And so please take advantage of that. That can, for some of you, you might only do 5 projects a year. So literally the tool's free. So lots of good things. I'll be following up with everybody here. Hopefully you got some good nuggets of knowledge out of this conversation. I do encourage like that pre-mortem. I know we have a webinar coming up, but our previous webinars and also some of our resources, I will share with you in my follow-up so that you can direct action do that. And I appreciate everybody's time today, and we'll see you at the next webinar. Thanks, everybody.